And finally, new rule, if we're going to have a new roaring 20s, let's not repeat the mistakes of the last one. I keep reading that America is poised for a roaring 20s, 21st century edition. A repeat of that decade a century ago when, just like now, the United States emerged from a pandemic ready to party as if there was cocaine in the Coca-Cola. Which there was. There was in the 20s, yes. And now, after a year of masking and distancing, I know I'm ready for the party, and I imagine millions of others are also itching to engage in risky behaviors like air travel, sharing a dessert, or tweeting what you really think. And why not? The 20s was an especially exciting time. The economy doubled, the masses could afford a car, women stopped wearing 16 layers of clothing. No dream was too big. Charles Lindbergh became the first anti-Semite to fly solo across the Atlantic. Babe Ruth hit a home run 575 feet, hungover, with gonorrhea, while eating a pork chop. And Joe Biden started running for president. And the stock market was a game where everybody was a winner. But we all know what happened next. The roaring 20s became the broke-ass 30s. It turned into a nightmare with the Great Depression, the rise of fascism, and worst of all, an endless stream of musicals about sailors. And looking at the economic factors right now, it feels like we're back in that headspace that we'll never run out of cash as long as the Fed doesn't run out of ink. I'm just saying, if we're going to do a new roaring 20s, let's do it this time without the two things that made the last one suck: Prohibition and a depression at the end of it. I am no money expert. I only turn on Jim Cramer to scare away the birds. But it does seem like the market is a little divorced from reality these days. It's odd that the real economy has been full of news of unemployment, bankruptcies, and going out of business signs since COVID hit. And yet the S&P is up 76% in that time. It can't go on forever. We can't all win. It's not the ticket machine at Chuck E. Cheese. A share of GameStop isn't really worth more than a share of Toyota. To bail ourselves out of that depression, we spent over 10 years, 6% of our gross national product. To get out of COVID, we spent in 1 year 26%. The way we're handing out money, you would think it had an expiration date on it. In 2008, when the global economy was on the edge of collapse, Congress passed what was considered a massive bailout of $700 billion. So massive, over 100 protests broke out across the country. The Occupy Wall Street movement was born. Now, the word billion is so last decade. Congress has passed $6 trillion to fight the war on COVID, $2 trillion more than we spent to win World War II. You know, the big one. 4 years of desperate fighting against a murderer's row of bad guys all over the world and under it. Not to mention this thing was kind of expensive to make. All that, in today's dollars, $4 trillion. This, $6 trillion. So look, the other thing we have to do in the new roaring 20s is end the drug war. This time, a little slow on that, stoners. But they're stoners. But seriously, this time, can we have the big party without having to worry about getting arrested for doing the drugs that keep the party going in the first place? Because in the 1920s, America banned alcohol for reasons which are still mysterious to me. Hey, we're about to throw this giant rager that goes on for 10 years. Make sure no one brings booze. So let's get rid of our own prohibition, AKA the drug war, and go straight to the part where we admit it doesn't work. The White House, it's okay. The White House, unfortunately, is going in the wrong direction. What the fuck, Joe? Well, you really got to give it to the drug war. It is bipartisan. It was 50 years ago when Nixon announced that drugs were, quote, public enemy number one, and told Elvis to get rid of them by taking them all. So much of the rot in our society stems from our modern-day version of prohibition. The people fleeing at the border, that's the drug war. The record-shattering amount of incarceration this country does, with all its implications for racial injustice, wasted lives, and skewed elections because so many felons can't vote, that's the drug war. Other people get it. Mexico legalized weed this month. Canada did it 2 years ago. Why are we always the last at everything now? Portugal ran this experiment. They decriminalized all drugs 10 years ago, and they had less than 100 overdose deaths last year. We have 81,000. The war is over. West Virginia lost.